Good start. So tonight we're going to be talking about macro composition, which was something that was suggested by Joe, and everybody agreed. They thought it was a nice idea. But what I just wanted to do, I thought about something that I think it was Denise had asked me when we were talking about the composition workshop thing. Denise asked me about is it worth taking pictures, or is there anything you can do on a dull sort of cloudy day to get shots? And to kind of, you know, I thought about it, and generally speaking it's always very, very difficult to do something like that, but I did actually think of a couple of times when a cloudy day can work for you. The biggest problem with a cloudy day is you don't want to get the sky in. So you don't want to be getting the sky in, really. So the one of the things I thought about is if you go into the woods, what you could do there is you can kind of shoot trees, and that sometimes that lower kind of light, you know, softer light can be quite helpful. So maybe what I would tend to do in that situation is put a telephoto lens on. And so, because obviously if you've got a wide angle lens on, you need to go and tend to get the sky in and all that sort of gubbins. So if you put a telephoto lens on, what I would probably do then is go and pick out details. So almost use it almost like a macro lens, you know, go and pick out interesting bark on trees or patterns on trees. So, you know, if you've got sort of conifers and they're all, you know, lined up kind of stuff. Particularly if you can do that with a bit of mist or something, that can really be quite sort of nice. And let it go flat, you know, let the pictures go very white and very low contrast, because that's probably quite nice. But other than that, I have to say, I mean, even given the choice, you've seen from pictures I've posted previously, given the choice, if I'm doing tree pictures, I like to get light streaming through trees and, you know, through the branches and get those beams of light, and you know, that's my thing. But I did think, yeah, there's probably if you did have to do it on a dull day, try and find something where you haven't got to get the sky in, and that's probably a better idea. Yeah, I think.
Thanks.
Yeah. Right then, guys. So let's get started then. Let's get started. Has anybody got any questions for me before we start?
No, I don't have a macro lens, Glenn, but I'm quite happy to listen, so where appropriate. So don't worry about me.
Okay, that's absolutely fine. Does anybody want to record it other than Jim before I start? No? Okay. There'll be a recording as always anyway. Right then. So Joe, you asked for this. First question then, why?
Because it's always been something that's really interested me. And obviously I did the course with you on a one-to-one in the summer, but then the weather sort of turned. So it was really tricky, you know, with the wind to, as we found on the day, it was a bit windy and things were moving. Yeah. It was a struggle. So yeah, I'd just like to recap so that when there is a chance to do some macro, then I've just got a bit more knowledge.
Okay, that's fine. Has anybody else got any sort of questions macro wise, you know, or difficulties they find with the macro stuff?
The stacking for the macro.
Okay, the stacking, yeah, I can talk about that again.
Quite good to review.
Okay, we can talk about that. I'll find a stack and see what we can do.
Glenn,
yes.
Was the stacking that we did was in Zareen, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. Yes.
And that was on like a free thing, wasn't it, for a month? Is there another one that you can suggest?
Well, you're on a Mac, aren't you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Then I use Focus Stacker on the Mac.
Oh, there you go. Focus Stacker. I know there was two. Thanks, Ian. And there's Zareen. I think Focus Stacker's about 15 quid. Is that right, Ian?
I think it was, yeah. But it's very good. It's worth doing.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Maybe because I haven't used that, Ian. Maybe if you can, at some stage, if you could, while we're talking now, if you could dig. I don't know if you've got any pictures from a macro stack that you could do. I just wondered if you could show us.
Yeah.
I just wondered if you could show Joe how to use it, because obviously I can't because I haven't got a Mac.
Yeah.
So if you, while we're chatting, if you could perhaps have a look at that for us, that would be useful. Okay. Right. So what I did a collection, macro collection. Because you did the macro course as well, didn't you, Ian? So you should have some stacks from there if you've still kept them.
Unless I've deleted them.
Yeah, if you have, then just
If not, I'll
perhaps just,
go and do one quickly.
well, no, I'll just show us the software and kind of explain
Yeah.
it on a 1, 2, 3 kind of thing. Okay, right. Let me share this then, guys. I'll just share the whole screen. I think it's easier. Right. Okay, I can see all your lovely faces. I shall pin my video. Pin to second screen. There we go. Right. Okay. So first thing I wanted to talk about macro composition in general, and this is probably quite a good thing to mention at this time of the year, really, is obviously the flowers now are kind of on the way out. Let's just see if I can get this full screen. There we go. So the flowers now are kind of on the way out. There's still a few around. So if you want to keep on shooting macro, then maybe you need to start looking at inanimate objects kind of thing. And the great thing about macro photography is the most ordinary, boring thing can really look quite interesting in macro. So, you know, these are, I would have done this on the course if you were here, and you've just got these drawing pins, they're just stuck into a telegraph pole. But when you photograph them in macro, you start to see things that you didn't even know were there. You know, you've got all this lovely rust, but you even see this little sort of circle in the centre, and it starts to, you know, and there's multiple colours. You think of the drawing pin, it's just this one colour, but it isn't. It's lots and lots of colours. So maybe go and have a look at inanimate objects. Go and look at things that you wouldn't normally have considered looking at, because, you know, I just think anything in macro just looks really cool. Now, the interesting thing here on this one, I mean, you can just look at the textures again. It's just a nail or something. Amazing textures there. But what this one does is I actually got the lens at 5.6, which is obviously quite a big aperture. And I'm sure you will all remember this from your macro course, those that have done it, how little depth of field you get. So if you think of the dome on a drawing pin, I mean, that, you know, you're talking about 1.5 millimeters, 2 millimeters, and you can see here that the centre's sharp, and by the time you get to the edges, that's out. So if you're going full in 1-to-1, and this would be 1-to-1, if you're as close as you can possibly go with your macro lens, then you know, that depth of field is tiny. So what I mentioned here, hopefully, did you bring your macro lenses with you guys? Could you talk about? Yeah. The way I would do this picture, and I would have done this on the course, but it doesn't hurt to refresh on this, is I would have put my macro lens. So if I grab the macro lens, so if you want to grab your macro lenses, we'll talk about these. So on your macro lens, you've got, depending on which model you've got, you will have some switches on the side. Okay.
Yep.
So you'll have one switch that says auto and manual focus. That'll be M or AF or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay. Pretty self-explanatory, that one. Can't really go wrong with that one. Then you'll have one that might be a focus limited, and not all lenses have this. Are you okay with this stuff, Ian, or do you need to?
Yeah, I'm listening and stacking at the same time.
Oh, okay, fair dues. You've also got what's called a focus limiter. Now, this can be a bit confusing. So what the focus limiter does is it divides your focus distance into two. So if you think about, you've got close focus when you're doing macro, and then you've got far away focus when you're doing maybe a portrait or something else with the lens. Okay, so by default, the lens will go all the way from its closest focus all the way to infinity. But the problem with that is if you lose focus on something, and you know yourself that sometimes you go to get focus, the camera misses focus, and it goes bzz, bzz, all the way in, all the way back.
Yeah.
So the purpose of the focus limiter is, instead of that lens having to go all the way to infinity and then all the way back to the closest point, it just goes within that short distance. So it just goes between the closest point and maybe 0.5 meter. And on that thing, it will tell you what the distance is. So mine actually says 0.5 meter, in fact, to half a meter to infinity, and then you'll have one that is the closest point to maybe half a meter. It'll either be a 1 or a 2 position switch.
Yeah. And mine says limit or full.
That's right, limit or full.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the benefit of it being limited is that if it does lose focus, then instead of having to go all the way into infinity and then all the way back, it's only got to do that short range, so it'll come back into focus quicker.
Yeah.
Now, generally speaking, I do say to people, you probably just leave it on full, because the number of times that people forget that they put the limiter on and then the camera won't focus beyond half a meter. So if you then try to do a portrait, you're thinking, hang on, why won't my camera focus? Because you've forgotten about that switch.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, that's what it's there for. But as long as you understand that's what it's there for and you remember to switch it on and off, if you're in any doubt at all, just leave it off, because it doesn't take that much longer to go all the way to infinity and all the way back. It doesn't take that much longer. Okay. So
Glenn, if you were going to buy a macro lens, is that something you'd recommend you'd look for on one?
yeah, I mean, normally I recommend the Sigma. The two that you're going to get, the Sigma and the Tamron. For some reason at the moment, the Tamron is ridiculously overpriced. I don't know why. It's like £600, whereas the Sigma is about £325.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and obviously you've got Nikon and Canon ones and various bits and pieces as well. Okay. So that's the focus limiter. Now, the way I would have taken this picture is I would, oh, and the other one you've got in there is image stabilization. Now, depending on which model you've got, that'll say VR, OS or something like that. Yeah, OS, OAIS or something. Now, image stabilization is really, really good, because one of the biggest problems with macro photography is not only do you magnify the subject, but you magnify the movement of your handshake. And anybody that's, you know, tried macro realize that it's really quite difficult to get pictures sharp. So image stabilization, I would definitely say, you know, if you say, for instance, you decide to buy second hand, if you buy the version 1 of a lot of the lenses, the Sigma or the Tamron, they're cheaper, but they're not image stabilized. And I think image stabilization is worth paying for.
Okay, thanks.
And what are the two settings I've got off 1 and 2 on
Right. Oh, on the image stabilization.
Yeah.
So 1 and 2. So off is obviously off.
Yeah.
And remember, you would always put it on off, not just on the macro lens, on any lens. You would put it on off if you were on a tripod. Yeah. So remember, always switch image stabilization off if you're on a tripod. All right.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you'll get movement, daft as it sounds. Okay, so 1 and 2, so if you've got a lens that says image stabilization 1 and 2, it wants to be on 1. 2 is used if you're doing action photography and you were panning something. So if you were sort of wanted to use your macro lens to photograph a sports event, you would put it on 2. So basically what the difference is on 1, it controls camera shake in both axes, so that way and that way. And in 2, it switches off this axis, the horizontal axis, because otherwise, if you're panning, obviously what the image stabilization is trying to do is it's trying to imagine, it's trying to counteract something you're doing on purpose. The way I would do this kind of shot, where I want to get as close as I possibly can, is I would switch my lens to manual focus, M, and then on your lens you will have a window here with a display in it. That's your distance, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you would move that to the opposite end to infinity. So you'd move that to the closest focus point. So in your window there, or your dial or scale or whatever you've got, somewhere you'll see the number 8 on its side. Yeah. I don't think you'll be able to see it, but you know what I mean with the infinity symbol. There it is. Yes, so you'll see the number 8 on its side. So obviously you don't want that way. You want to go all the way the other way until it stops.
Yep.
Now that is the closest focus distance, and it's about 10-15 centimeters. So then what you do is you hold you and the camera and move forward and backwards until the thing you're photographing becomes sharp. So it's like focusing in reverse. Instead of you standing in one place and the lens focusing, you're putting the lens at its closest focus distance, and then you're moving forward and backwards to focus. And if you use that method, you're guaranteed to get the biggest magnification that you possibly can. So if you're out there photographing things like ladybirds or some things that are really, really, really tiny, then that's the technique to use. But don't use 5.6. Go and use at least f11. Because at 5.6, you can see at that distance, you get about 1.5 millimeters sharp, 2 millimeters, if that. Okay. So any questions about the lens settings or the operation or that technique? If you want to give it a name, it's called trap focus. Because what you're actually doing is trap focus. Trap. T-R-A-P, as in bear trap.
Oh.
Yeah. And what you can do actually, just as an addition to that, because as I say, your depth of field really is tiny and it is actually quite difficult to hold your body still, what you can do is if you put your camera onto motor drive, on its fastest motor drive, what you can actually do is as you go forward and back, you can go and with a bit of luck, one of them will be sharp.
What are the other settings on the camera, Glenn, that you would have it on for that?
On the camera, right, so basically obviously the camera, so the two things that you need to have realistically, you've got to be looking unless you're going for a special effect where you want a really out of focus background, you're at least looking at an aperture of f11.
Okay.
Minimum. Anything smaller than f11, particularly if you're really close, your depth of field is going to be so tiny. I mean, this is at 5.6. So I'd say you aim for a minimum aperture of f11.
Okay.
And also a minimum shutter speed of at least, preferably higher, but at least 125. Now, to get those two settings, you're going to have to raise your ISO. So let's say, for the sake of argument, you're at 400 ISO and at f11 on aperture priority, and your shutter speed is 60th. Then, if you double your ISO, it will double your shutter speed. So if your ISO is 60th, and your shutter speed is 60th, and your ISO is 400, if you double your ISO to 800, your shutter speed will be doubled as well, which becomes 125. Okay. Now, and if you have to go to 1600, you have to go to 1600. I will shoot macro quite often at 1600, particularly now, Joe, where obviously the lighter nights are going. I mean, if you still get a lovely sunny day, brilliant. But now you probably will be shooting on days that are less bright, so you're going to be using 800 and 1600 more and more if you want to go off shooting now.
Okay.
Okay. So the other thing that again, the benefit of inanimate objects, and this is why I started off with these, is they don't move. You know yourself, if you're trying to do insects or you're trying to do flowers, they're forever swaying about or flying off and just generally being obnoxious and a nuisance. So, by doing sort of things like textures and different type of subjects, go in and these things don't move. But go, please, because a lot of people don't use this, go and use your macro lens for what it's best at. What I find that sometimes is a lot of people use the macro lens and then go and photograph the flowers, which they could have done with their 18 to 270. You know what I mean? They just you get the whole flower head in, and you get the whole thing in. Go in really, really close, and use that macro lens for what it's good at. Go in there really close and utilize it. So again, that's just a piece of garden rope. It looks like a rope off a ship because it's so big, but it's not. It's just a tiny thin piece of twine, So again, just picking up little things, go and look at things that you wouldn't normally photograph, because when you do, you'll start to see details like these little scratches, you know, and stuff that you never see in real life. Instead of photographing the whole post box, once you go in on the macro, you can now start to see, look, how many times it's been painted. You can almost count the layers of paint, you know, on that. And then going even closer. So you've got close, then going even closer, because that's what macro lenses do. They're going really close. Go and use them for what they're brilliant at. Also, go and work around a subject. Once you've got something, be tenacious. I always say this, you know, be tenacious. So you start off with one picture, then go in a bit closer, then try a different angle, you know, sort of change your position a little bit. And just move around, just try different things. You know, start to look. And I think this is really the trick with a macro lens. You have to develop the way you see things. The way you see things changes, and it doesn't come immediately. What tends to happen at first, you're very overall, you don't really start to look in at things. You know, you've got to start as you're walking past, you know, we've got the orchard in the village, you know, and you walk past there and you've got the fence, you see the fence, but you look closer and you see the flies, or you see the ladybird, or you see some interesting moss, you know, or you see some interesting textures and those type of things. So you've got to start training yourself with macro to start looking a lot closer, you know, at the things you photograph. So, and then once you've got it, you know, if it is an inanimate object, you know, allow yourself a bit of time, maybe take the tripod with you, because obviously it's difficult to use the tripod if you're doing insects and flowers because they tend to move, but you've got something like this, you can take the tripod. And once you've taken the tripod, you can now start shooting, you know, sort of changing your apertures. So you can go for the big and blurry look, or you can go for the small and sharp, you know. Now, if you have got limited depth of field, the trick is try and photograph things that are flat. So if, for instance, it is a bit of a dull day and you can't get past f8, then there's no point photographing things that kind of go back a long way. So what you're better to do is shoot down at something that's flat. Because obviously, if you're trying to do that nail, I don't know what size they were, they're probably 2 inches long or 1.5 inches long, to get 1.5 inches sharp in its depth is quite difficult. But to shoot down, it now might only be, you know, 6-7 millimeters. So a lot easier to get in. So this is the focus stacking. So this is what you get at 5.6. And this, oh, sorry, this isn't actually stacked. This is what you get at f22. Okay, but what we can do is we can also use focus stacking. So what focus stacking is where, you know, imagine a panorama. If you had a panorama, and we talked about panoramas, you know, way back, you're going to take a picture like this. You're going to go one there, one there, one there, one there, and then you're going to join them together. Okay, that's a panorama. A focus stack is a picture where you're going backwards on the focus instead of side by side, and then the software is stacking those pictures together. So it's taking the sharp bit of each picture, and then like a jigsaw puzzle, sticking all the sharp bits from each individual picture together to create one picture that is sharp all the way through. Now, the other way to do it is to do a really small aperture, but of course you do that, you tend to get a very slow shutter speed. And I'll tell you now, your results are better with focus stacking because the whole thing tends to come out a lot sharper. One of the talks we did, we talked about lenses, and lenses don't generally give their best performance at the very smallest apertures. You know, they tend to give slightly better performance at slightly wider. So I think this sounds like a very good point to hand over to Ian, who's going to show us how to use this software, this stacking software, which not only will show Joe how to use it, but it will also show everybody what focus stacking is if you haven't remembered it. So I'm going to stop sharing, Ian, if you want to take over, mate.
Okay. I'm going to have to apologise because I have misplaced image 8, which is the final image to make the image absolutely pin sharp. But I have got the finished article.
Okay, good.
So these were
do you
taken.
want to share screen?
I thought it was.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Hang on. Ah, there it is. There it is. Got it. Yeah.
Got it? Okay.
Yeah, got it.
So this is Focus Stacker. So all I've done is just normal export with these into JPEG, into a folder on the desktop. So you've got the 7 images across the bottom here. And these were taken completely contrary to what Glenn just advised. But these were taken at f2.8
right.
at 1/60th on a tripod using a light box and a I don't know what they're called, Glenn, the attachment for the tripod, which you just turn the knob and it sort of scales in and out.
Oh, like a focus rail.
Yes.
Focus rail. Yeah.
Focus rail. Thank you. So everything was stationary, and then you just index the knob just sort of a little bit, and you move the camera maybe 0.5 millimeter or even less. Take the shot, and then when they're already exported, and Focus Stacker is such a simple tool. If I can get it to work, there we go. For some reason, it wants to stack that last one. There we go. So I'm literally just going to drag these into this focus stacking software, and it'll go do its thing. It's so simple. It just takes a few minutes. Obviously, the more images you've got, the longer this takes. This is just 7.
Did we do that, Glenn, when we did that, when we were doing the stacking? Did we use JPEGs? I can't remember.
We did use JPEGs,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
So usually what I recommend people do is to send them out as JPEGs into the software and just reduce them in size. So think about what size you need them for output. As long as you're not printing them big, if you just put them on the internet or anything like that, you know, sort of 2000 pixels across is more than enough. So if you put them into, when you export them from Lightroom, assuming you're using Lightroom, obviously export them all with the same settings, and then what it does, it just means the software can work a lot quicker because it's not having to deal with huge great files. And also, depending on the software, I know the one we use doesn't allow raw files anyway, so you've got to export them as a JPEG.
Right.
Yeah, this file size is rather large because I just quickly exported them and I didn't reduce the size down. So these are being exported at 6,000 by 4,000. So it's a big
Are they JPEGs?
Yeah, JPEGs.
Yeah, yeah.
But they're quite a big file, and it's still doing it reasonably quickly. There you go, done. As I say, I'm missing the final one to make the tips of the pencils crystal sharp.
Right.
But that was the finished one afterwards.
That's good. Yeah. Okay. So that's cool. So that hopefully, Joe, you've got a gist of that coming over. I'm not exactly sure if I actually managed to record that screen or not. I'm hoping that Zoom has, because I've got 2 monitors on. So
Yes,
hopefully that worked.
That would be that putting the photos into Lightroom and then exporting them into the stacker. That's how it's been done, is it?
Yeah. So
So basically, what? Yeah.
Sorry.
Carry on, Ian.
I said, yeah, did them in Lightroom. I didn't touch them in Lightroom, although you can obviously do a light edit first. But whatever you do, you need to do to all of them. But then took it into just exported them onto the desktop. Open the Focus Stacker app. Drag the images into the app, and just go make a cup of tea. Come back and they're ready for you, and then you can then bring them back into Lightroom and do your final edit, which is what I did there. Whereas I don't know whether you can still see the screen. There's some sort of paint chips and dirty marks on the pencils, which I took out just using the heel brush, and then because it was sort of a training session for then I put a vignette on it.
Cool. Yeah.
You absolutely have to.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, got it. Yeah, just got to be done, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Just got to be done.
The rules. Yeah.
So just a couple of things that I would have done differently. So I would definitely reduce the size when you export them, because that is just going to, you know, as you saw there, it's just going to make the whole process quicker. Ian only had 7 or 8 pictures there, but you can see that they don't go focused all the way back. If you were doing something that was deeper than this, you would need more pictures, obviously. And the example that we use on the course is the example we use on the course is the £2 coin, and we need at least 11 shots to get that front to back, because it's around about 2 centimeters deep. So we need about 11 shots. And the other thing I would do is I would tend to shoot an aperture of about f11. The reason being, if you shoot these at 2.8, your depth of field is probably about 2 or 3 millimeters. So you've got to take a lot of shots, and you've also got to be incredibly accurate not to get a band that's not sharp. So by using f11, you're getting the sweet spot of the lens. That's going to be really good quality. You're getting slightly more depth of field, so you need to take less shots. And obviously, at the end of the day, 10 shots at f11 is going to give you a greater depth of field than 10 shots at f2.8. And then what I'd say, I'd take them into, what I would actually do is take them into Lightroom, edit the first one. Don't crop them, because what actually happens with the software is the software will kind of crop some of the picture off anyway. So when you frame it, if you frame it too tight, then you will actually lose part of your picture. So you need to be a little bit careful with that. And yeah, so don't crop it too tight, f11. And now the difference is, I'll just, so if you just stop sharing, I'll come back up again. The other thing that Ian mentioned, and he did do it differently too, because not everybody's got one of these, is Ian used a focus rail, or a macro focusing rail. I don't know if you can see this. Okay, something like that, Ian. Is that what you used?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, so what this does is, normally the way we do it is we put the camera on a tripod and then we focus. So what we're doing is we're focusing back through the object. Yeah. So basically what this does is, instead of us focusing back through the object, the focus stays fixed, and then you moving the camera forward. So the focus is still moving backwards. It's just that you're moving the camera to achieve it, as opposed to moving the focus ring to achieve it. Now, there's, you know, sort of, there's pros and cons on both. One of the downsides of this one, it's not a problem. You just have to be aware of it. It's a good idea, if you do use a focus rail, just to whiz through it once first, because as you get closer, then obviously you're getting closer to your subject, and you could end up cropping off. You might start at the back of it, get it all in. By the time you get to, the front of it, get it all in. By the time you get to the back, because you're closer, it takes up less space and you've lost some. Yeah. So just, if you do use one of those, just whiz through and make sure you get it all in.
The other issue I've had with using that is having not done what you just suggested. By the time you've got to the end, you're actually touching the image, touching the object rather.
Yeah, you can do that.
And all of a sudden you realise what a silly what's it you've been. You've got to reset and do it all over again.
And it's at times like you say, I should have done what Glenn said. Yeah. But I mean, these do work. They're quite good. So yeah, these are quite good. Interestingly enough, actually, if you have your, we talked about panoramas a while back. If you've got your camera on an L bracket or something like that, you can actually mount this bit on your tripod. And if you think about your cameras on there, what you're actually doing is you're actually moving the camera back. And so you've got like the nodal point. So you can actually use that, if you've got one of those, to get better panoramas if you're on a tripod.
And they're relatively inexpensive.
Well, they're not that expensive, yeah. No. Yeah, quite cheap. So yes, those are quite, they're quite good. Actually, I use them for various other bits and pieces as well. So if you want to get one of those, get one of those. But otherwise, just go camera on a tripod, f11. It's a good idea. I mean, as long as the light's consistent and the sun's not going in and out. That's the other thing, of course. If you're doing it outside, don't forget you're taking multiple pictures. Just like a panorama, you can't have the light changing halfway through your shots. So, you know, if you're going to do it, don't do it when the sun's going in and out, because if you take number 1, 2 and 3 and the sun's in, and then number 4, 5 and 6 the sun's out, you're going to get a bright bit and a shadowy bit. But yeah, that's brilliant. Good. What else do we have?
Thanks, Ian, for showing that.
That's great. You're welcome.
Yeah, good, because it looked nice little bit of software for 15 quid. That was good. What's it called again?
You've got to make me forget now. Focus Stacker.
Focus Stacker.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Good stuff.
What would you use for a PC then?
Oh, on a PC, it's called Combine ZP, and it doesn't look anywhere near as pretty as that. That looked like it was designed by somebody that, you know, who knew what they were doing. Combine ZP looks like this. It's but it's free, but it is so easy to use. Again, just like they all work the same, pretty much the same way. First one is basically, where are your files from? Oh, it's remembered from last time. Here we go. Yeah, so where are your files from? So you go and choose your pictures. There you go. There's the pictures.
Can you share your screen, Greg?
Yeah, we can't.
Oh, sorry. Right. So at the minute you can see, sort of Lightroom screen. So this one combines ZP. So yeah. So it does not look pretty. You know, it looks a bit amateurish. It's been around for absolutely years, but it's brilliant. It's so easy. So all you do is you click on New, and it basically says, where are your photos? So here's sort of a stack of photographs. Now what I did here is, this is actually not, you know what I always say, you know, do as I say, not as I do. This is actually a stack of pictures where I've literally held the camera and gone like that. So if you imagine the focus point moving, so in actual fact, Ian, it's actually what you were doing with the rail.
Yes.
And I'm doing it freehand. So I'm actually so I don't recommend this, guys. This is you know, not recommended. But actually holding the camera and then going like that to get the shots. Yep. They've all been reduced in size. I think they're about 2,000 pixels. I think. And then the next thing is, these are all different methods of stacking. And if you know what you want, you can go and choose just one. But the easiest thing to do is just click on all methods, because then what the software will do is it will try each of these different methods and see which one works out the best. So you've said, these are the pictures I want. This is what I want you to do to them. And then go. And now it's just wobbling along. You're doing all this. And I think yours just did one stack, didn't it, Ian? That software you used?
Yeah, it is quite basic.
Didn't give you any options to try different methods or anything?
No, no.
Okay.
There are other software for the Mac that does do that.
I think that's Serene probably.
Yeah, you're starting to get into big money.
It's about 90 quid or $90.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is just working away. Now, bear in mind that this is actually going to produce about, I think it's about 7 different images. So if you'd only chosen one image, the whole thing would literally take about 5-10 seconds. But because we've asked it to do the whole lot, just while that is going through, I can talk. You can still see this picture of the logs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I really like that picture.
Yeah, so the reason this picture here is because obviously when we're talking about depth of field, and again, go and use this to your advantage. We talk about the depth of field and the blurry background, but you've also got a blurry foreground. And so what you can do sometimes is actually use that to your advantage. You know, maybe if you photograph a flower, so say you've got nice, I don't know, bluebells or something, you get one of those bluebells sharp, but get down really, really low and get some bluebells in the foreground out of focus, because then you'll get like a nice ethereal sort of blue foreground, and then a bluebell sharp, and maybe even a nice ethereal blue background.
I've actually got one of those right here.
Yeah. So there you go. Now, so what this does is this basically, there you go. You can see what I studied. It's stacked them together, and that now is sharp all the way through. But yeah, so that's really good. So a couple of things you learnt there is that's basically the focus the focus rail method that that Ian did. Have a go, have a go. The worst that he's not going to cost you anything. Do you want to save anything before quitting? No. So there you go. So have a go at that. And so you've got 3 methods there actually. You could either static tripod, change the focus. Obviously manual focus. You can't use autofocus. Got to do that in manual focus. You can do what Ian did, which is put it on a tripod with a focus rail, move the focus rail forward about 1 millimetre, 2 millimetres at a time. Or you can do, if you're really feeling brave, you can do what I did and try and do it handheld. And all the technique for that is you need a fast motor drive. And so you're there and you go, and and do it on the way in and on the way out, because the software don't care. It doesn't care if you're going all in the same direction or coming back. All it does is it looks at the pictures and it looks for the sharp bits and then puts the jigsaw puzzle together and hopefully makes it look good.
You're not do it in Photoshop?
Yes, you can. Yep, there's a method to do it in Photoshop. But I say if you've got a PC, go and get that software, because Photoshop does the same thing. It takes 10 times longer, and I don't think the results are as good. And it only does one method. Yeah, it only does one method as well. But yes, you can do it in Photoshop. The other thing here I wanted to look at then was think about your focus again. And I think sometimes we get over-reliant on autofocus. And I have to tell you, if I had a manual focus macro lens, it wouldn't worry me in the least. But what I wouldn't want is a manual focus macro lens without image stabilization. You can't get that. But generally speaking, 9 times out of 10, a lot of the macro stuff I do, I'll do it on manual focus, because you can do things like this. You can choose your focus point. And I tell you, it's really interesting to get something like a dandelion, go to manual focus and then just move forward and back, or rotate the focus ring, because you'll see kind of the front of it disappear and the center of it becomes sharp. And it's really quite interesting. And likewise, if you get sort of moss, get your lens there and do the same thing, just kind of move through the wall. It's almost like moving through a forest. The other thing to look for, so we talked about, we asked about composition and such like, so think of harmony. And this is what we were saying about, this sort of out of focus foreground. And so what I'm doing is, obviously this one's sharp, but these are the same plants. Basically what I just said a few minutes ago, I used bluebells as the example, but this is the same sort of thing. So think about that sort of colour harmony, using the same plants to kind of give you a nice background. This, again, think about depth fields. And I encourage you to experiment. And this is one of the things that if you do have a tripod, it's a good thing. I don't like tripods generally, but I think when you're experimenting, tripods are really good because you've got consistency. The camera's always in the same place, so you've only got focus changing. If you're kind of handheld, then each time you take a picture, you might subtly frame it differently. And so, that might be different. So here we've got a shot taken at f/22. Same shot taken at sort of f/3.3 in actual fact. But, sort of go and try it, and then try one in the middle. Go and try one at f/8 or f/11 as well. So sometimes, I know I said, realistically you're aiming for f/11, but don't forget the way that focus works and depth of field works, it depends on how close you are to the thing you're photographing. So when I'm photographing the drawing pin, because I'm at the closest focus distance, my depth of field might be 2 millimeters. But because this flower is considerably bigger, I'm further away, so my depth of field might be 2 centimeters. That's why I can get the whole thing sharp at a reasonably big aperture. So I encourage you to, try different settings.
That's what I want to be able to do, Glenn.
Yeah, well, you can. You just got to, I tell you what I would do, Joe, is go and practice. I don't like flies. Flies are horrible. Hate flies. But they will stand around most of the time, particularly, the blue bottles and the green bottles. They just seem to be very confident. And, they will often just sort of hang around. So go and photograph other insects, beforehand. Or ladybirds. Ladybirds don't tend to move. Ladybirds will let you get, really, really close to them. They won't fly off if you see ladybirds. But again, the trick is if you are photographing an insect, try to put your focus dot on the eyes. So for this shot, I haven't got my focus in the center, because if my focus is in the center, it would focus on this flower here, which you can see is out of focus. And so that means that the bee would be out of focus. So what I've done, if you remember, is you move your focus dot inside your camera to be on the thing. So if you're to do that, move your focus dot over to the right-hand side.
Yeah.
Yeah. Every time I look at a picture of a bee or something, I just find something new. I just noticed now it's got this little hook. I mean, I'd noticed these legs before, and the other thing is how hairy bees are.
Yeah.
Bees are incredibly hairy. You know, they really need a shave. So, I mean, this is a shot that you would have done, obviously, on the course, or hopefully everybody go at this. And then, again, you know, go in closer. And so this shot, again, was done using that technique of putting the camera to its minimum focus distance and then getting as close as you can. So anytime you're dealing with something that is tiny whiny, you've got to move the lens to the closest focus and then move the camera to be as close as possible. Also, they don't have to be pretty all the time. There's a great temptation. People say, oh, there's nothing to photograph because all the flowers have gone now. It's winter time. But there is stuff to photograph. You know, I think that flowers, when they're dying off and they've got all papery and dry and stuff like that, and they've got fabulous textures on them, you know, I think they're much more interesting, or as interesting. You know, it's like, you know, sort of drying up leaves and that type of thing. Also, think about your backgrounds. I am a huge fan of, you know, obviously either getting the background completely out of focus, or one of the things I love to do is I will deliberately go and change my position so I've got a dark background. So when I'm looking through the lens, you know, if you're doing macro stuff, it only takes a tiny little shadow area to give you a dark background. So if that's in the sun and then behind that there's a bit of shade, you know, you stand this side, it's lit, but you just move 2-3 inches to the right, and you get a shadowy background. You pop that into Lightroom, just bring the blacks down a bit, and you've got this almost like a studio picture. Again, get in close. That's what macro lenses are great at. Get yourself in really, really close. You don't need to get the whole flower in. You can get the whole flower in on your 18-270 or that lens. You know, go and get yourself in really, really close. You know, get yourself in there, because this is where the macro lens excels, because you then start to see all this sherbet fountain stuff going on, you know, stuff that you don't know about in real life. And the only way to capture that is use your macro lens. You know, make yourself a rule that, you know, I'm only ever going to use it at the closest focus, and try that for a bit, see what happens. You know, and just things, you'll start to notice things like how hairy a lot of plants are. So many plants have got these little sort of barbs on. Keep your eyes open for all sorts of stuff. You know, keep your eyes open for things that you would normally walk by. So this is obviously a wing off some sort of insect. Again, you know, oh, and the light. The light on this is behind it. So the idea is it kind of bounces forward. That same thing, if I'd have taken it from the other side, which I didn't, from the other side wouldn't have been half so interesting. So getting, because of these iridescent sort of wings, by having the light behind the subject coming towards me, it gives it that really nice sort of sparkly lighting effect. Something different. I'm sure you're, you know, we've just got the field down the road. The horses always come up to you, you know, and there he is, you just sort of take his picture. And so obviously we've got the landscape there reflected in the eye, and you can try that on just a friend, you know, if you get your partner or something, and see if they'll stand there and let you go and photograph their eyeball. I was doing a macro course one day in the village, and somebody passing by said, oh, hello, what's this? Is this camera club or something? And I explained, and I explained that we were doing macro photography, and this guy actually said to me, can you take a picture of my eye? Yeah, if you want me to. And there we were, you know, literally in the street taking a picture of this bloke's eye. Yeah. So I meant to get these out for you. Now, these things are great. They come in different sizes. These ones are tiny. They're about they're less than 1 centimetre. They're about 7 or 8 millimetres tall. And they come in all sorts of things. You know, you can get railway workers and different professions and all sorts of stuff. And they come in little sets. They're not expensive. They're about 10 quid, I think, 10, 15 quid. And they say they come in different sizes. And they just make a fun little thing to have a play with. So that was a dead fly from the conservatory. And then we've also got the dead butterfly from the conservatory.
That's lovely.
At least they don't move when they're dead.
Yeah, that's right. They don't. Yeah, yeah. So he's just propped in there. So yeah, I mean, obviously he's a little photographer, so it kind of, you know, fits in there. And the nice thing about these is, I think actually this was actually taken in the conservatory as well. So, you know, the nice thing about doing it indoors, and it doesn't have to be a conservatory, it can just be by window light. So it's nice, simple lighting. You're on a tripod. You can focus stack it if you want to, and you know, you just do that little bit of still life. It's kind of good fun.
Mm-hmm.
One of the ladies who came quite recently actually made a birthday card for her friend, and she's got these little Lego figures, little Lego men, and she arranged them in a little picnic scene. So when she came on the course, we kind of went through, you know, the technique and how to do it and the focus stacking and everything. And she said, she did send me the picture, and it was lovely. And she actually got some sand and sort of just put it on a board, you know, and then a cocktail brolly to represent a brolly.
Mm-hmm.
Parasol thing, and then these little Lego men, and there was a miniature car in the background, and it was a lovely little scene, you know, lovely. And she did that for somebody's birthday card. There you go. So again, that would have been that technique, put it on the minimum focus. I think if you can get this, then, you know, this is cool. When you can, I mean, they're horrible, aren't they? They really are. But look at that eye. I mean, that's amazing.
They are amazing. Yeah.
Then you get these really weird ones. Every now and again, you get these, looks like something out of an alien movie. So I'd never seen this type of wasp before. I did actually look up what it was called, like a long-bodied wasp or something or other. But yeah, I just saw that out one day. So you've got to thinking, I've got to get a picture of that, because that's just so unusual. And he was jumping around all over the place. Another one with their eyes. I don't know if anybody's seen the film The Fly, with Jeff Goldblum in it.
Yeah.
But the thing I remember, when I saw this picture, I actually thought about that. The reason being, because the first symptom he had of being sort of turned into a fly was he was getting hairs growing out of his back. And whenever I see this, that's what I think of.
Yeah.
There's another one there. So I say, you know, you can see how close I am to those. So these guys will just, it's weird, you know, because when they're in the kitchen, you're trying to kill them. You can never catch them. But when you're outside, they just seem to hang around for days. There's a couple more bees. Yeah, this lovely, amazing. They've got these mouths, they're just huge, great mouths. They're incredible. I mean, these are just so difficult. The best time to get these guys is in the mating season. They will hang around. Otherwise, they're just flying around all over the time. But when it gets to the mating season, they will tend to hang around and wait for a mate. And so they will often just sit around for a little bit on a leaf. So this is, we talked about depth of field. Probably do this one first. So if you have got limited depth of field, this is actually at F11. If you've got limited depth of field and you think about a butterfly, if that butterfly is side on and flat, you can get the whole butterfly sharp. But at the same aperture, you only get it front to back, you only get its head sharp. Yeah, so kind of keep things like that in mind. If you can't use a big aperture, small aperture, because the weather's not good or it's not bright enough, then obviously if you photograph your butterflies and you photograph them side on, think about that. You don't need quite so much depth of field. Yeah, there you go. So another example. So that's straight on. That's F11. So you can't get it all sharp, but you do it straight on, and that's actually at F8. So able to get the whole thing sharp. And that shows you just how cocky flies are. I'm photographing a ladybird, and a fly came in and photobombed me. Yeah.
Nice colours though, with the green.
Yeah,
and the red.
they are, aren't they?
Yellow.
I mean, that's the crazy thing. They are beautiful. Yeah. And then there you go. That's the chap I was actually photographing. So again, these would have been done using that technique I talked about. This would have been the minimum. If you're going to do a ladybird, the only way to get a really good close-up of a ladybird is use that minimum focus distance method I mentioned. There you go. Oh, so here we just talk about backgrounds. It's that spider shot. So think about your backgrounds as well. So there against a white background, that's actually on a window. So you got a shot. But here, this is an interesting one. So even though it's a split background, I think the picture works because the colours in the background reflect the colours in the spider.
Yeah.
Not the sort of the dark. So that kind of thing works. But this is what I was saying about positioning, though. You just move slightly one side, you can have him against the black.
Yeah.
You move slightly the other way, you can have him against the red. You go this way, you can have a 50-50.
Yeah.
There you go. That's all the slides I wanted to show you. Does that kind of think that helps you, give you some inspiration there, Joe?
Yeah, they're cool. They're super cool. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just practice, really. You just got to you just practice macro. You know, I said right on when you do the macro course, macro is very, very difficult. There are so many things. You know, I don't know if you remember the first slide, but there was about 12 things that make macro photography difficult. And you know, if you're worried about those things, you just never go out and take a picture. So you know, just go and practice. But start on, as I said there, start on inanimate objects if you can, because they don't move, you know, and you can hone your skill and then go off and get the difficult things. Yeah, go and hone your skill. Yeah. Right. So other accessories then. I mentioned last week or last time or at some stage we talked about lenses, and I mentioned a set of extension tubes. These are extension tubes. There we go. So they come in different sizes, and the purpose of these is simply to move the focus point or the camera away from the lens, away from the camera. So they come in different sizes. Okay. So if you had a normal, has anybody got a 50mm prime? Anybody got one, a 50-50? Yeah, you've got one, Helen. If you had one of those and you put a full set of these on, you would get about 1.5 times magnification. So what that means is not 1-to-1, you would actually get better than 1-to-1. So if you were thinking about doing your, if you had a 50mm lens and a full set of extension tubes, put that on there, then you could get sort of a really, really good picture of a ladybird. Now the good news is, well, of course, if you've got these and the macro lens, there's nothing to stop you from putting these on your macro lens.
Wow.
And now you're getting super close. But I mean, and certainly you would easily get 2-to-1.
What's the trade-off, Glenn?
Depth of field, mate.
Yeah.
No, 2 trade-offs actually. There's 2 trade-offs. One of them is depth of field. Your depth of field will be minuscule. Even at f11, I bet you're talking about 1 millimeter.
Okay.
So realistically, you have got a focus stack with these. Yeah. You're probably at 2-to-1, getting on 3-to-1 magnification, probably. So you're looking at focus stacking. Certainly use the smallest aperture you can get away with. You're magnifying more, so your camera shake is massively increased. So all the problems that you've got with macro photography, double it, and that's what happens if you put a set of extension tubes on.
I remember you saying in conversation some months ago, and I can't remember what the full story was, about the gloss level inside the tube.
Yeah. So these are actually Jessup's ones, and they are quite shiny inside. They have got baffles, but you don't think you'll see. But inside is the tube. It's they're not the I can't really see, no. But when you look at the paint inside, it's kind of gloss, and yeah, and you can kind of see shiny bits. And one of the problems I've had with these is sometimes you get flare. It lowers the quality of the image. If you buy the better quality ones, these are just, I bet these are £20.
Yeah.
So I mean, if you want to get into macro on a budget, whack a set of those on whatever lens you've got, and you've got macro for 20 quid.
Yeah.
You know, but if you buy the better quality ones, they tend to have like a felt inside, and they're less chance of getting flare. So, I mean, it's not normally. It depends what you're photographing, but just if obviously if you've got really bright lights or anything, they can be a problem. So that is a set of extension tubes. The other things that I do suggest. Oh, now what you could do, of course, and the benefit of this is you can actually do it with your. So if you've got the kit, DPC kit, and you've got your adapters, and you've got a 62mm close-up lens, there's nothing to stop you from putting your close-up lens on the front of your macro lens. Now, it's not going to give you the same magnification of those tubes, but it just gets you that little bit closer. If it gets you 10% closer, that's 10% bigger. Yeah? So if you've got your filter kit and you've got your close-up lens in there, perhaps do a little experiment. You know, try a shot, get as close as you can. Maybe you know, put the camera on a tripod. Get yourself something that a little model or just a pepper pot or something that you can photograph. You know, bring that forward. Then measure the distance. You know, to the front of the lens if you want to. Doesn't really matter. To the front of the lens, and then go and put this on and see how much closer you can get. You know, it might only be a little bit, but all helps. So little accessories that are really, really good. We did this for the flower picture. So the flower droplet, something like this is really useful. So these are about £10 from Amazon. If you want me to, let me know and I'll send you a link. All I've done here is they've just got these crocodile clips. These crocodile clips are really sharp and really tight. So what I just did was I just got a straw and I just put a straw on here just because as soon as you clamp the flower, it just cut the flower in half. So by using a sort of a straw, I was able to just sort of soften that join there a little bit. Yeah, because that is just very.
Glenn, can you stop sharing the screen so we can see you bigger?
Yes, certainly. Hang on. Let me do that.
Yeah, you're just a little. You're just.
Let me go big.
Yeah, that's better.
There you go.
Yeah, that's better.
There you go.
Yes.
There you are. That's
it.
So
there, we can see it now.
Yeah, thanks for. Yeah, I don't see what you see. You see, so there you go. That's crocodile. Clip.
What's that? What did you say that was called, Glenn?
It's called a helping hand.
Okay.
They're on Amazon. I've got one.
Yeah, I think they're about less than. I'm sure they're less than a tenner or somewhere around there. Yeah, something like 10 quid. Or now these, I couldn't. It took me ages to find out what these were called. I call them bingo clips, and I did a search for bingo clips, and I couldn't find them. They're called bingo card holders.
Oh yes, yeah.
Yeah, bingo card holders. So if you, I don't really go to bingo, but if you've ever been to bingo, apparently, you know, they have them in the middle of the table and they hold the table number or whatever. A pack of 10 of those is, again, like 10 quid. And again, it's just that little thing that you can just hold something, you know, flower or whatever. Because when you're doing macro with small things, it just means you don't be afraid, guys. Honestly, do not be afraid to do this, set them up in a studio. You know, trying to do macro outside on a windy day is hard work. So, you know, get your flower, you know, find sort of something that looks like the background. So that can be anything. You could have a tea towel with sort of flowers on it or something, just a green towel or anything you've got, you know, just sort of something that's the right colour in the background. You can use a picture, you know, say that picture of the owl or something, just something that's going to be out of focus anyway, but that could be your background. Yeah. So you've got your little clip, you set it all up on the clip and go and do it in the comfort of your lounge by window light or something like that. And it's not cheating. Honestly, it's not cheating. All of these pictures that you see, or a good chunk of these pictures that you see from wildlife photographers and stuff like that, where they're getting these incredible pictures, they're all done in studios. You know, they're all set up, they're all done, and they'll make a little hide, and they're all done in a studio, and that's how it works. You honestly haven't got a guy wandering around the woods, sort of, you know, trying to just click things as he goes along. It just doesn't work like that. Yeah, yeah. So those are really good. Bingo card holders. Bingo card holders.
I've been to. I went down to Homebase and got a load of samples of different types of wallpaper, so I'm going to try those as backgrounds for things as well. Just two foot samples of wallpaper.
Yeah,
all sorts of textures, bricks and
good
tiles and stuff like that. So I'm going to have a go at that when I get some.
If you've got a printer, make your own. If you've got a printer, just make your own. You know, literally, just go and take a photograph, and when you take it, put your camera on manual focus. Put it out of focus, built-in out of focus blurry background.
Yeah.
So go around taking out of focus pictures. And so literally, you know, when you're there doing your macro stuff, just put the lens on manual, flip it out of focus, take a couple of shots. Remember not to delete them because you took them on purpose. And then go and print them out. Or if you want to, just use your computer screen. I've done that before now. You know, just put the picture on your computer screen. Yes. Careful if you're working with water or anything, but you know, and then set your picture up just in front of your laptop.
Yeah.
Or use an iPad. The only limitation is your imagination.
Yeah, that's where I go wrong.
And then finally, and again we would have talked about this, is we talked about the ring flashes. Now, I'll just brief. Now, what you can do is if you've already got a flash gun, you know, like a speed light or something like that, you can use that. But what you really need to do is you need to put a diffuser on it. And when I say a diffuser, I mean that could be just a piece of card. Just put something on it, because what you've got to basically do is you've got to get the light down to the end of the lens. So because the problem is if you've got your speed light on the camera and the thing you're photographing is kind of down here, the flash can't get to it because this is all the way. So what you've got to do is you've got to basically get the light here. And then the simplest thing I do is you can just get a piece of white card or something like that. And then all that's going to do is it's just going to sort of bounce that light down onto the thing you're photographing. Yeah, so just stick that on with elastic band or something like that.
The Pringle tube, Glenn.
Yeah, or the Pringle tube. Yeah, the Pringle tube is absolutely brilliant. Pringle flash. So what you do there, you've got the Pringle tubes are great because if you've got the cap, keep the cap, because the cap acts as a diffuser. It's that sort of see-through plastic that acts as a diffuser. The other end, you just basically take the other end off, cut it off with a pair of scissors, sharp knife, mind your fingers, and then just plonk that on the end of your flash. And all you're doing is you're moving the light down the tube so it gets to the subject at the end. If you haven't got that, just get yourself a piece of white paper, make it into a tube, stick that on the end of your flash. You know, all you've got to do is find some way of getting that light down to the end of the lens. That's it. So that brings us to ring flashes. Now, ring flashes actually screw on to the front of the lens like that. And the benefit of a ring flash is it is shadowless lighting, because what actually happens is the light from this side counteracts the light from this side, and so on top and bottom, and so you get really nice shadowless lighting. And that is really quite good. So these are quite useful if you are trying to do macro photography on a bit of a dark day. Then one of these guys will allow you to this will give you around about the 400 ISO. This gives you f32, so plenty of depth of field. Yeah, loads of depth. But the good news is as well is because you're using the light from the flash, you can actually keep your shutter speed at something like 250, 200th of a second, and get f32, f22. So you get a fast shutter speed, so you don't get camera shake, but you also get a good power, so you get a small aperture. So these are a win-win. Now, this one, if you want to make a note, this one's actually called Centron. You would have covered this on the course. We'll look on eBay in a minute. These are discontinued. I've got to tell you, they're really hard to come by, and they're getting harder and harder to come by. So if you see one and you can get it for less than 20 quid, go and buy it. Because to buy something now that does the same job new is about £150. Better, obviously, but you know, one of these old ones will do the job nicely. Now, this is a flash. That is, it takes a flash picture. I do not recommend these ones. It looks the same. It is not the same. This is an LED light.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is an LED light. So all this is basically is like a torch. It still works and it will help, but the difference is this will only give you around about f11. And even though they on the website, I'll show you in a second, they describe them as a flash, but basically what they mean by flash is it just switches the LEDs on and switches them off. It's not like that sort of flash. Yeah, those are much more powerful. So they do work, you know, but, and they will give you a bit of extra light, but nowhere near the extra light that you would get from the flash gun. And if you use a high shutter speed like 2/50th, I bet you would only get away with about f8, which is not really a lot better than you get with a camera anyway. Okay, so we'll have a look at those, shall we? See if we can find one. Let's go and have a look on eBay for you. That was Centron. Yeah, sometimes they're called. They sometimes use the name Vivitar as well. Let's have a look on eBay for you, if I can find one. So I think I'm probably still sharing my screen.
No, not yet.
No, right, let me share then. Okay. All right, eBay. Right. Let's try Centron ring flash. Right, so the first thing that will come up is these LED ones. I say, you can get one if you want, but I don't recommend them. And every time I do this, I have to be honest, there's less and less. They're all LED ones. I think all my students have bought them. Oh, there's one. There you go. There's one.
Oh yeah, £5.
£5. Buy it now. There you go. So pre-owned, click and collect. Let's just have a look at that one. Oh, actually, there's another one there as well. Oh, there you go, guys. You'll be on there in a minute. There's two here. There's actually one here for a Nikon as well. They're LEDs. I'm not sure if that one's LEDs or not. Let's have a quick peek of those. Right, this is the one I've got. £5. Buy it now. We'll post to UK addresses. Now the thing is, they come with an adapter to fit your lens. So if you look on the back here, that bit there is a certain size. But you know your stepping rings that you got in your filter kit? So all you do is you would use a stepping ring to make it the same size as your lens. So so this one here, for instance, is 52. Mine is 52. So what I would do is, obviously, if I put this onto my macro lens, I would need a 52 to 62 adapter. Yeah. And the other thing to make sure it has, which it should have, is it's got to have that cable. If you haven't got that cable, it ain't going to work. So let's make sure he's got the cable. If I was going to buy that one, what I'd probably do is I would just message the guy and say, has it got the cable? Because without the cable, you can't use it. Okay, that's that one. What's this one? So this one would be a bit more powerful by the looks of it. £7.10. submit a bid, and that is for a Nikon, dedicated to a Nikon. So if anybody's got a Nikon, that's a good buy. See what you can get it for. So Marumi DRF14, if you want to do a search for that one, that would be good if you've got a Nikon. And again, it will be an adapter ring, so you just have to get the right size adapter. I don't know if it tells you what size the adapter is. It doesn't seem to. No. No, it doesn't seem to tell you what size the adapter ring is. And then this one, let me just check. This is actually a flash as opposed to an LED. Yes, it is. Yeah. So yeah. So the difference between these is this one, this type of one. This goes obviously on your hot shoe, and then the flash goes on the front of your lens. Yeah. Mm-hmm. The one I've got, the batteries just go in this bottom bit. The batteries go in the bottom bit, so the whole thing's on the front of your lens. So it doesn't matter which one you go for. This is not massively heavy, so whichever one you go for. But yeah, that's ring flashes. So 30 quid for that one. I say every time I do a search now, there's less and less of them. If you go and want to buy a brand new one, if you've got the money, if I go to Amazon and Yongnuo make one, so if I go Yongnuo ring flash, but this, I mean, this is a lot better. This is a lot more professional. This is there you go. That's it. They've got one there. So they do two different ones actually. They do this one, which is very similar to the ones you've just seen. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then so that's pretty much similar to the one you saw for 30 quid. Though it might be TTL though. Might be TTL. Let's see if it's TTL, then that means it's auto exposure, which could be beneficial. Let's just have a quick look at that. Where's the bloody description? Don't miss it. Box instructions, macro ring. Oh, it's got adapter rings with it as well. Doesn't tell me a great deal.
Might see something on the image.
Yeah. What does that say? Mode, ratio, lamp. The fact it says mode suggests to me that it probably is TTL. So basically what that means is it will automatically give you the right exposure based on the aperture that you're using. Yeah, so that's a possibility. So that's £92 for a new one. And then if you want to get super duper good, you can go for the next one up. Obviously make sure you get the one for your camera. Go for the next one up. So you can see the benefit of this one is you've got bigger flashes and you can position them around more. So you've got a bit more control. So you can light one side of the object up more than the other side of the object up. So that's kind of cool as well. So, but I would probably say you need to be doing quite a bit of macro to justify throwing that in. Okay. There you go, guys. Any questions about anything we've covered? Have I covered everything?
I think that's a really useful refresher. Thank you.
Yes, thanks, Glenn. Appreciate it.
That's all right. Pleasure.
Then I do have a question, but it's not macro related.
Go on, fire away. Yep.
I've obviously got the, well, not obviously, I've got the camera, the D3-400 that you recommended for beginners.
Yeah.
What stage should you go on to the next camera, and what should it be?
I think I will throw that open to the group because I'm sure you've all been there, guys. I know you've been there, Helen. You upgraded, didn't you? So,
yeah, I did, yeah.
Okay, guys, go on then. I'll let you answer that. When did you feel it was necessary to upgrade your camera?
Well, I did mine quite quickly, actually. I came up from a D40,
Right. Okay. Yeah. That, I mean, that was quite old, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. So I had the old D40. So when I looked to buy a new camera, I happened on the D7200, and then came on your courses, and that was the one you were recommending. So it was quite a fortuitous selection.
Good stuff.
But for me, the 7200 just does everything I want it to do.
Yeah.
I mean, the next thing I suppose then is you start thinking about going to a full frame and rebuying all the lenses and everything, and paying thousands and thousands of pounds, which I don't have.
Yeah.
So the D7.
Has anybody else upgraded? And what's your thinking behind it?
Oh, I just upgraded. When I first came on your course, I had Canon, and then I went to Nikon.
Oh, right, okay.
Me too, me too.
Big change, but I had a D7000, and now I've gone to the D7200. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a cracking camera.
It's not much different, but I've got the two, so it's you know, with the 7200 is much better. Yeah.
The quality is much better on the 7.2, isn't it? Yeah, particularly the ISO is 100 times better.
Use as well. They seem to have just improved the way the buttons and everything work. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what was it then that made you feel the need to? I mean, you're not in your case, Chris, because you went from a 7 to a 7,000 to a 7.2, so not a huge.
Not
so huge. Yeah. So we're talking about going from sort of an entry level camera. So who went from an entry level to, say, a 7.2 or a mid range camera? Who did that?
Yeah, I guess I did that. But I think I just did it early on in your courses, because once I started thinking about buying lenses, a bit like Chris has just said, I swapped from Canon to Nikon. So I didn't want the expense of, you know, not having wasted lenses and things. So yeah, I did make the decision quite early on, really. But then I bought second hand, and I've done that twice now.
Yeah. Yes, good idea.
Yeah, and it's been, and I've got 7,200 as well, and I bought that second hand, and it hadn't got many shots on it, so perfectly happy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So are you finding a limitation then, Joe, on your camera, or you just feel like you want to upgrade for the fun of it?
Partly for the fun. No, because of things that we've touched on the Thursday evenings, when I haven't actually had the functionality on my camera, so that's what made me start thinking. So yeah, I from what you're saying, it sounds like the images would be sharper if I went for the 7200.
Well, I mean, the big thing is, don't forget, it's the lenses that are going to make a difference to the sharpness and stuff like that. But things you will notice immediately, you'll definitely get better ISO performance. You know, and that's a big thing. The 3.4 is a good starter camera, but the ISO performance is not fantastic. So you definitely get that. The things to take into account, I mean, there's more settings on there, so things like the HDR, you know, that's really, really useful, being able to set your custom settings. It's got things like, it's got built-in Wi-Fi, if that's important to you, so that you can actually send pictures to your iPad. I mean, I would say now, I mean, the 7.2 has been around for quite a long time now. The replacement for it is the 7,500. There's pros and cons. I like the 7.2. One of the things I like about the 7.2 is it's got 2 card slots in it. And I've got to be honest, I mean, it's still a cracking camera. It really, really is. Just because cameras, I was having a conversation earlier on with Jim, and we were talking about the Nikon D700 full frame. Well, that camera's 12 years old, but it was based on the Nikon D3, which was a £3,500 camera, but it was half the price, because basically it was like, it didn't, you know, the D3 is the professional camera. You can take it out in the rain, you can bang nails in with it, you know, but the innards and the center and all that stuff was all from the professional camera, costing twice the price. And even to this day, that camera, you know, still holds its own. So camera technology has not really changed massively over the past sort of 6 years. So even though the D7200 is an old camera, the quality, it still stands up really, really well. Shall we look at a second-hand one for you, see what they cost?
Yeah, you're naughty. This is what happens when I come on your course.
It cost me a fortune, these courses. It's not the course cost.
Yeah, no, that's
it's
right.
the auxiliary afterwards.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry about that. So let's have a look, shall we? Nikon D7-200. And now we'll say actually second-hand cameras have actually gone up in price because there's a shortage. But there you go. A new, so we'll look at this and then we'll look at a new one. That has got 569 in excellent condition. When you see these numbers, it says shutter count. Honestly, 12,000 is peanuts. It really, anything like that is peanuts. There you go, look at that one. Excellent condition, 5,000 activations. It'll be like new.
Yeah.
I bought from, I didn't get it from here, I bought it from somewhere else. But I bought a used 750, Nikon 750, and it said excellent condition. I'm not kidding you. When it turned up, it was in the box. The strap was still wrapped up, and you looked at it and you would not know it was not a new camera. And it was half the price of a brand new one. Yeah,
I bought all my lenses from these guys and they've been fabulous.
So if we look at a new one, they give you warranty as well, so you know. Nikon D7-200 from Amazon, they'd be generally the cheapest. So there you go, body only. Oh, hang on. They tell you that's an old 7,000, eh? Don't that. There's a 7,500. I got to tell you, this is happening more and more now. I go looking for stuff and they haven't got it. Let's go and have a look on Wex. There is a real shortage of cameras. I think it's because of the COVID situation and stuff like that. D7-200. I've been looking at this is a new webcam, by the way. I don't know if it looks any different to you guys, but this is a new webcam. So I've been testing webcams out, and I don't know if anybody's heard of it, but there's a webcam which is kind of the industry standard called a Logitech 920. It's been out for 12 years now. The price of them was about 60, 70 quid before lockdown. They now sell for over £200.
Wow.
Very difficult to hold them.
You can't get hold of them, yeah. They go, that's a used one there. So Wex have got a used one as well for 552. So hey, look at this one. Camera is mint condition. So that's from, and then you've got one.
Count 1,000, yeah.
Yeah, that's a D7-200 there. In mint condition. Then there's one that's slightly, I mean, this one's mint, and the next one was 500 quid. And that was 9 minus as opposed to 9 plus. These will be just like like new.
And they take trade in as well, don't they?
Yeah, they would do. Yeah, so you take your other one in as well. But keep that as a spare, I would, because they'll probably only give you 100 quid for it. If that, I wouldn't give you that. They won't give you a great deal. Keep it as a spare. I would.
For the days on the beach with lots of sand.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Or sometimes, I mean, what I like to do sometimes is shoot. I did it last night. I shoot with 2 cameras, so you can have a wide angle on one and a telephoto on the other, or something like that. Well, yeah, shoot with 2 cameras. Saves changing lenses, you see. Yeah, so there you go. So something like that. And then the other one to look at is the.
Glenn, can I just ask you? That says it comes with a white box. Yeah. And I bought a lens off Amazon that came in a white box, and I wasn't sure whether that was okay or not. Because does that not mean that they've split a kit if they've done that?
Yes, they could well have done that. So sometimes what you'll do is they will have items that have been on display and they've lost the box for it or something like that. Could have items that somebody's had and sent back. So with Amazon you can send stuff back. So obviously they can't then sell that as a new one. So it could be something like that.
Mine just
if they sell it as new.
Yeah, and it came. It was a new lens, and it came, and it wasn't in a legitimate Nikon box.
I would be suspicious about that. Yeah.
I mean, so I did send it back at the time.
Oh, did you? Yeah. What I mean, sometimes what happens is. Sometimes what happens is, as you quite rightly say, they'll buy a kit. I actually bought. I bought a camera once, and when you looked at the body only price, and I bought it with a lens which was an 18-140, and the difference between the two was about 50 quid. but the lens sold for 200 quid. So basically I bought it with the lens and then sold the lens for 150 quid, brand new lens, you know, literally brand new lens, never used, but I was 100 quid better off than somebody got a new lens for 50 quid less.
Mm.
Yeah, so the other one that
18400 would fit in there nicely.
absolutely, yeah, absolutely, yeah. 77.5. The only other one to look at if you want the latest sort of technology, you know, the latest one. But then there you go. There's a big jump. That's 900 quid then for a body for the next one up. So if you, yeah.
How much is the full frame D7 75? Was it 75?
750.
750.
Well, the 750's been. You might get a good price because the it's the 780's out now, so you might get that at a good price.
It's not much more.
Yeah, 11.29.
Yeah, it's not much more, is it? But you're looking at 900 for that one, and was it 11.29, 11.30 for that one?
That's full, but then you've got to buy all new lenses.
You've got to buy all new lenses, of course. Yes.
Yeah. But I mean, that shows you what a bargain I got. I paid. Did I pay $699? I think I paid $699.
Yeah, I remember you saying.
So
you were over the moon with it.
I was just a bit. So not quite half price, but almost half price.
Yeah. What would you say, Glenn, was a reasonable shutter count for a second camera?
Oh God, anything up to 50k, no worries at all, mate. In fact, what they do, if you read the instructions, they say they're good for on most amateur cameras. They say they're good for 150 to 2,000 activations. Yeah. Not 150,000 to 200,000 activations. Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, generally speaking, the lower the count, the less it's been used, and the more likely, you know, it's going to be in good condition. Yeah. Most people look after their kit really, really well, but obviously, if you've got 50,000 count, you've obviously been taking that camera out quite a bit. Yeah. So the lower the count, the better. Just really because they've obviously not been using it. I mean, you literally, I've seen cameras go up with counts as low as 1,500, where somebody's bought it, you know, tried it, not used it, can't use it, put it back away, and after 3 years they'll go, oh, we've not used this, might as well sell it. Yeah.
Well, how can you tell how many counts your camera's done?
Right, if you go online, there is a website. So if I just have a quick look here, shutter count, if you just type in shutter count, there you go, and there's actually a website called camerashuttercount.com, and basically what you do is you take a picture and you just upload that picture, and this will come back and say your camera has done this many shots.
But isn't it as simple as the number of the shot on the, you know, when you import it into Lightroom, it comes up with a number, isn't it? The same number?
Yeah, it's only a 4-digit number, isn't it?
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah, so
I didn't realise.
Yeah, it's only a 4-digit number. Yeah, so the easy thing to do that is just go to that shuttercount.com, and then you just take a picture. Just take a JPEG. Don't shoot a RAW. I mean, I don't know if you can use a RAW one or not. But yeah, just take a picture on a JPEG, and then just upload it, and it will just say your shutter count is this.
Okay, thank you.
Was the first website you looked up for that camera MPB?
MPB, yeah. So MPB, I think if I remember rightly off the top of my head, MPB do a 3-month warranty, and I think, but you need to check, I think WEX do 6 months.
Okay.
But you need to check that. So bear in mind that WEX had an excellent condition one for a little bit less, or about the same, was it? Was it 550, did I say? I think I said it was 550.
Yeah, 512 or something.
Yeah, 512, so something like that. Yeah. So yeah, so go and have a look on there. But I don't worry about buying used. People, and if a camera's going to go wrong, it's going to go wrong. It's going to go wrong, you know, within the first 2 weeks, a month of getting it. Mm-hmm. Because, you know, if somebody's got rid of a camera, maybe they got rid of it because something wrong with it. You just don't know, do you? possibility. So when you get it, go and use it right away. Try it all out. Do lots of different things on it. Make sure you're happy with the pictures. Make sure the sensor's clean, and then you're happy to go. Yeah. So I did get a good price because they've got a used one here, which is in condition 9, 800 quid, over 800 quid. So for me to get that for 700 was a bargain. There we are, guys. So another good evening.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
So next week we're back to Photoshop again.
Yeah.
Please, if you haven't already, go and watch the other videos if you haven't seen them. It takes me a long time to do those videos, so if you don't watch them, I feel like I've wasted my time. So, you know, I said I'd do them, so go and watch the videos, even if it's just a refresher for you. And then the following week, what do you want to do the following week, guys? Any suggestions?
We do a feedback session.
Yeah, you can do. Photo feedback.
Move to a Wednesday.
Sorry, Jim, what was that?
Move to a Wednesday.
Move to a Wednesday.
Yeah. We did move at some stage.
Yeah, well, okay. Well, I mean, that's the vote thing, really. So obviously, people have paid for their subscription, so you all need to be able to come. Wednesday.
I can't do Wednesday. So.
Actually, Wednesdays aren't actually brilliant for me either, because if I go to click, that's on a Wednesday. Yeah, we certainly will. Any other nights I can do Mondays, I can do Tuesdays. You know, so I'll tell you what I'll do, folks, is I will go to the group and I will put a poll. I think I can do that. I can put a poll saying who would like to do what day and who's available for what day. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we'll try to go. Obviously, we've got to go with the majority.
We do an any day option as well in the selection.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. If people are available all the time,
it doesn't
that's
bother
helpful.
me in the slightest.
Okay, that's brilliant. Yeah, any day. I don't know if you could. There might be an option is to click multiple choices. I don't know if you can do that.
Yeah.
You know, so that'd be cool. Okay, then. So, are we all happy with the feedback session? Photo feedback.
Should we pick a theme?
You can have a theme if you want to. It's your group. Do you want a theme?
I'm throwing some ideas out there. Like maybe a macro from this.
I like it. Yeah, that's good. That's brilliant. Let's go and put it into practice, guys. All fresh in your mind. Go and try yourself a bit of focus stacking, you know, a bit of inanimate objects. Right then, guys, nice to see you all. And
thank you very much. It was very interesting.
See you and all.
Thank you.
Take care.
Yeah, see you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, thank you.
Bye.